The Politically Correct Lie You Are Being Told to Believe by Dwayne Noodle of Sebring, Florida. It is the Big Bang that is being lied about. The American people are told to believe that all the mass of our universe was at some instant in the distant past compressed to a diameter so small that it would have become almost invisible. This is an impossible concept, one that has nothing to do with physical reality, either past or future. The following is the reasoning behind this statement. Just by casual observation, a person understands that it takes more energy to construct an entity as a black bang, spelled correctly, mass than it does for it to unravel, as at present, as suns release the energy given them. Who is capable of creating both mass and energy to begin with, and then compacting it into individual stars, if not the Creator? Let's take a look at the basis of the Big Bang and see if the concept survives another collapse. There is a singular feature relative to the Big Bang that causes it to conceptually fall apart. The problem began with a statement Sir Isaac Newton made 300 years ago, which was, quote, "Every particle of matter in the universe attracts every other particle with a force that is directly proportional to the product of the particles and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them," end quote. Although aware of it, Mr. Newton neglected the concept that in order for work to be accomplished, there must exist an energy source. No energy, no work. It appears because there was no evident manner by which any known energy could be associated with the concept of gravity that Mr. Newton ignored the necessity of it, which requirement was not necessary at the moment, because his equation for the force of gravity was still workable. Professor Einstein, a few hundred years later, did not seek to modify the work of Mr. Newton. So he proposed that as an accelerating mass moved, it gained more actual mass through form of energy, as according to his earlier equation, E equals mc2. This mass inclusion would continue onward all the way toward becoming an infinite mass, having a comparable field of gravity. Because mass is composed of electromagnetic energy, the energy change within an accelerating mass is subject to the equation for that of accelerating energy, which is E equals hf. E equals hf is energy equals Planck's constant times frequency. Planck's constant is a mathematical constant, and the frequency is in hertz. This is the equation describing an energy change within electromagnetic energy, and the energy frequency also of acceleration. As the lines of frequency within an accelerating mass increase in density, so does the speed become proportional to the frequency line density in direction of travel. Then in the 1930s, Mr. Oppenheimer considered the properties of a neutron star and thought it possible for a gravitational field within that mass to become so intense that the mass would collapse into nothingness, that it would become as a black hole in space. He also accepted the concept that the force of gravity could be compressed as well as that of mass. He also was mistaken. Gravity cannot be compressed. Recently, Mr. Hawking and Mr. Penrose in the 70s proposed the existence of a black hole, which when formed would collapse mass, energy, and gravity also, into a mass density greater than that of a neutron star, which mass would continue collapsing until it formed into another space-time region, forming into another new world. Their black hole would emit nothing but the force of gravity, although that's been modified now. But it is impossible for mass to be compressed into forming a new world having time values apart from our own. In the formation of a hypothetical black hole, the forthcoming energy needed to compact it into existence would begin being released in form of an increased gravitational field previous to becoming compacted, meaning that you cannot compact mass and at the same time expect the force of gravity to become compacted proportional to that of mass. The physics trilogy describes the formation of a field of gravity, showing its limitations. M equals E divided by C2 describes the formation of C2 into mass, meaning that mass is composed of time, which is why all clocks relate one with another. E equals mc2 is the reduction of mass according to C2 into energy, this describing also that mass is composed of time. We ourselves are wholly and totally formed of physical time. Then the last, C2 equals E divided by M, shows the construction of a field of gravity, or that of physical time. And what this is saying is that gravity itself is time. It is a physical representation of time. The force of gravity is an energy to mass relationship, whereby the total energy within a mass cannot exceed that of the mass containing it. Mass cannot be compressed, so that the total energy value of compression becomes greater than that of the mass itself. Present-day hypothetical black holes cannot exist, and if they cannot, most assuredly the Big Bang could not have taken place, whose compression would have infinitely exceeded that of a hypothetical black hole. The theory of black holes became necessary to explain why galaxies are bound so tightly within their spiral, when there's not enough mass present to perform that work. And the Big Bang is used to explain our universe, apart from the existence of God. You are being lied to. If black holes are able to exist, one would exist within the center of our own sun, where mass cannot exist within 400 miles of its center, due to the potential of it exceeding the speed of light within that region. If black holes cannot exist, then it is for sure that the, quote, Black Bang, end quote, never existed. The following equations are complementary thoughts to the previously written note. The first presents present-day thought concerning the equation for gravity, and the second, the modification necessary for it in order to function as it should. The first one, we find the force of gravity is equal to G, which is a gravitational constant, times mass 1 times mass 2, divided by the radius squared. That's what's used at present-day consideration of mass-to-mass attractions. But the correct way to describe this says that the force of gravity is not a constant. In the top, we find G being a constant, but it is not. In the second equation, we find mass 1 times q squared, which is the heat energy, times mass 2 times q squared, divided by the radius squared. In this equation, both the masses are examined for the energy content and form of gravity. This can change. If our planet, the size that it is, were to have no heat energy within it, which heat is represented by Q squared, our planet would have no field of gravity about it, even though its great size exists as it does. And then conversely, if the Q square value were to increase, our gravitational field would also increase. That is true of all masses, which is why masses need to be represented each by themselves according to mass times Q squared. The second equation states that in every instance, the mass of every object is to be considered separate from all others, and the energy within the mass to be squared. If there is no energy, there is no work. The force of gravity requires a presence of energy in order for it to perform the work it does. Our sun converts 665 pounds per second into gravitational energy, and our planet 0.00444 kilograms per second. The force of gravity performs work. You must have an energy source in order to do that. For consideration of other concepts, you might try Bones of Time, wordpress.com.